Hello friends! The theme for this week's photo challenge is fences. A fence is usually defined as a barrier or structure that marks a boundary, offers protection, or creates separation. When you look up fences, the image results show a predictable mix. Old wooden posts, ranch lines stretching into the horizon, chain link patterns, tidy white pickets. Lots of ideas, but also a reminder to look for something a little different. Here are a few fences I've photographed in the past. I like revisiting older work because it helps me see what kinds of compositions or moods I naturally lean toward. For this week, I decided to photograph the Sorreo Gateway at Ted Runner Stadium. It's not a fence in the traditional sense, but it is a boundary, and because it's named after one of my in-laws, it carries a personal meaning for me. I'm using the Fujifilm GFX 100 RF with the Provia film simulation. I photographed the gateway from several angles. Here are a few of those stills. Here's the raw photo of the one I liked best because it felt the most balanced. The light, the lines, and the sense of arrival all came together in a nice way. Here we are in Capture 1 where I do my editing. After doing an auto adjust, I usually bring the exposure down a bit, then raise the shadows and dehaze to add some presence back into the midtones. I cropped unconstrained to center the structure, but the geometry never looked perfectly right. This is part of working with architecture that isn't perfectly symmetrical. I did the best I could while keeping the photo honest. This photo also needed a healing mask to remove the light pole and some distracting chain link fencing in the background. These few small mixes help the gateway stand cleanly on its own. After exporting at a max dimension of 800 pixels, I was ready to submit on fredmiranda.com. Each entry needs a title and description. I usually go for a pun here, but couldn't come up with one for this assignment. After a week of voting, my photo didn't place in the top 5. I understand that my gateway didn't have the color of first place, the drama of second, the texture of third, the creativity of fourth, or the relatability of fifth. But winning isn't the point. I enjoyed getting some sun on my face, slowing down, and taking a long look at the Sorreo Gateway. If you want to see how I do on the next assignment, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope today gives you something worth photographing. G'day, friends. This week's photo assignment is flags. I have my trusty Leica MP240 and Voigtlander 75mm combo today. My first thought was to photograph anything that isn't the USA flag because it's going to be a very popular subject and I always want to stand out. I hope to find a pirate flag, pride flag, red flag, or anything that showed some creativity on my part. Here are some photos I've made in the past that would fit the assignment. Here's what I was able to capture while out on my walk. You've seen all my options. I'd love to hear in the comments which photo you would have picked to submit. Here's the raw version of what I chose. I did some healing to get rid of a treetop and some wire, hit the auto adjust, brought down the exposure, raised the shadows and dehaze, and just like that, I was finished. I submitted my photo to fredmiranda.com, and after a week of voting, my photo didn't place in the top 5. Kudos to forum member Rusty Bug for this winning photo. It is a very special capture indeed. But winning isn't everything. I enjoyed getting out of my routine, slowing down, and taking a closer look at the world. If you want to see how I do on the next assignment, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope today gives you something worth photographing. Hello everyone. It's time for another photo assignment. This time the good folks at Fred Miranda have tasked us with photographing rainbows. The first thing I like to do is pre-visualize. When I think of rainbows, I think of the natural phenomenon, the pride flag, and the dark side of the moon. Even though conditions were promising, I decided I wasn't going to actively search out a natural rainbow. I didn't want to photograph a pride flag because I had just used a flag as my subject for photo assignment number 2. And I didn't pursue the light going through prism idea because I really wanted to go out for a walk. Next, I searched through my photo library for rainbow photos. Aside from some iPhone snaps, this was the only photo that popped up. I love this photo, but it was taken off a pier in Port Hueneme, and that's a nearly 3-hour drive from where I live. Then I remembered one of my favorite photos from 2025. I used shutter drag to photograph some decorative umbrellas right here in town. My plan was to go out and take an even better photo than that for this week's assignment. It's colorful like a rainbow, and the fact that they are umbrellas helped tie the concept together. So here I am at Orange Street Alley with my Leica Q343. And wouldn't you know it, I can't make the photo happen. I still don't know what I did wrong. I used the same camera and settings as last time, but every attempt came out way overexposed. I'm not embarrassed to tell you I even pulled out my phone and watched my previous episode that featured this photo to double check how I made it happen. But as they say, man plans and God laughs. Thinking on my feet, I set the lens to f8 and composed a fairly straightforward photo of the umbrellas in the rain. The end result wasn't as unique as I was hoping for, but it was colorful and told a story. Let's head to Capture One and see what I can make. In an unusual move, I started in the Shape menu and used Auto Keystone since I was looking up at the umbrellas and hoped the computer could give me a better perspective. I liked what I saw and moved on to Auto Adjust. After bringing the exposure down, I set about to crop the image to my liking. I wanted to isolate the umbrellas in the frame as much as I could. After a heavy crop, I was happy. I nudged the contrast up, lowered the highlights drastically, brought the shadows down some, fiddled with dehaze, and then went back to contrast to give it a bit more pop. Then I brought the black value about halfway up and increased the shadows. And here's the final photo. I posted it less than an hour before the deadline. And after a week of voting, my photo took home gold. I was very proud because the other entries were excellent. As always, the members of Fred Miranda are so generous and kind with their congratulations and feedback. Thank you to them, and thank you to you for watching. I hope today gives you something worth photographing. Hello everyone. Are you ready for another photo assignment? This time the good folks at Fred Miranda have tasked us with photographing sand dunes. The first thing I like to do is pre-visualize. I considered heading west to the beach, south to Glamis, or east to Joshua Tree, but those options were all over an hour away. Part of my mission is to be creative enough to find subjects close to home. Looking through old photos, I found a lot of beach photos, but nothing that screamed dunes. This is the vibe I was going for, this ripply effect from water traveling by. I started at the Santa Ana River Wash at sunset. After hiking a ways off the road, I ran into a steady flow of water. No dried undulations anywhere. I took this photo, and I like it, but it was really stretching the idea of a sand dune. The next morning, I ventured to the San Timoteo Nature Sanctuary. I've photographed the small stream there that seemed seasonal. Here are a couple of photos taken on the Hasselblad 500 cm a few years ago. If I was lucky, maybe I'd catch some dunes out here. I was using the Nikon ZR and the 40mm f2 lens, which does have some decent close focus capability. For the most part, the ground was still quite wet, and the rollers I did find were very small. I tried a few scenes, but the one I ended up liking the most was this God's Eye view. If you squint, it's not that big of a stretch to suggest that these are sand dunes photographed from a great height. But let's head to capture one and see how the final frame was made. My struggle was twofold. I wanted the image brighter so that the wet sand wouldn't look so wet, but I wanted to retain any shadows I had so the image wasn't totally flat. I adjusted just about everything under the exposure, HDR, and dehaze menus. Then I cropped the photo a touch to focus as much as I could on the interesting lines within the frame. Here's the final result. I posted my photo with a title that, while hilarious to me, may have been a turnoff to some: Concepts of a Sand Dune. The good folks at Fred Miranda threw me some votes, and the end result was good in that I won bronze, but bad in that there were only 3 entries this week. But I'm proud of myself for going out there and making what I could out of the landscapes I had nearby. I felt a bit like a kid again, going out into the wash and exploring a place that nowadays I whiz by in my car. I even got to do some unplanned train spotting. Thank you for watching, and I hope today gives you something worth photographing.